Welcome to Mets Rivals. I'm Connor Rogers. A lot of moves happened during the offseason, and we want to make sure you know everything about the Mets' biggest rivals leading up to opening day. To break down all things Yankees, we're joined by Bryan Hoch, Yankees reporter for MLB.com. Last season, the Yankees were 94-68 and finished first in the entire American League and ultimately finished as the World Series runners-ups, getting taken down by the Dodgers. Bryan, we know what the story was of the offseason between these two teams. I'm sure you're at the point where you're almost sick of it, but Juan Soto leaves the Yankees to sign with the Mets a 15-year deal that could be worth up to $800 million. What did the Yankees do to replace him this year? We know they had a lot of money left over to spend and fill a lot of different spots.
They sure did. And Connor, there was a quick pivot after that they signed Max Fried to a big contract. They traded for Devin Williams. But on the offensive side, they traded for Cody Bellinger. He's going to take some big at-bats in the outfield. He's going to take aim at that short porch in right field. And they signed Paul Goldschmidt to play first base, and they're hoping for a bounce-back year from him. So is it enough to make up for the loss of Soto? I don't know about that, but they did prioritize pitching, defense, run prevention, and they think they've improved in those areas.
It's tough because obviously this team made it to the World Series last year, which is not easy to replicate, even if you come up short right at the end. But do you think this is a better approach to building the team? Because we saw the Yankees, they had one of the best 1-2 punches we've ever seen in baseball. But as you kind of mentioned, it felt like they came up short in a lot of other different areas of the game.
Yeah, and you saw that even in the postseason last year when they were winning series. You said, hey, this team doesn't run the bases all that well. They're not playing great defense at times. So I think that, look, Luis Severino said it last year, right? He said they've got two guys in that lineup that you don't want to face, and it was Judge and Soto. And now I think you don't have Soto, but you do have a more balanced approach. At least they did before injuries started hitting in spring training here. So I think that it is a more complete roster. Time will tell if it's a better roster.
A massive signing in Max Fried to the rotation, which Mets fans are happy to see him leave the Braves, Bryan. Even if it is to the Yankees, you'd much rather have him out of the division. What do you think this does for the Yankees rotation that now looks like they need him more than ever?
Well, it's so huge, especially now that you don't have Gerrit Cole and you don't have Luis Gil in that rotation. Where would they be if they didn't sign Max Fried? So, yeah, you've got him. He's going to start the second game of the regular season right behind Carlos Rodon, who's getting the opening day nod. But really, that's just ceremonial because of the way things lined up when Cole got hurt. Fried is their ace at this point. So they're going to be counting on him to pitch a lot of big innings, a lot of big games for this team. And you look at his career track record. He's been there. He's done it. Two-time All-Star. But he has had injury concerns in his past. So they're going to have to keep him healthy. They're going to have to count on him for 32 starts this year because he really is their workhorse now.
It's nearly impossible to replace a pitcher of the caliber of Gerrit Cole. But what is the Yankees' plan to kind of manage this rotation without him? Is it a quantity approach, or is there somebody in this system that they have high hopes for?
Well, Will Warren has looked great in spring training, but it's asking a lot for a guy, rookie who got really shelled last year at the big league level to come in and approximate what Gerrit Cole offers. But I will say last year, the Yankees were in a very similar situation where Cole went down in spring training. He didn't pitch until June, and Luis Gil stepped up. He was across the street in minor league camp. They brought him back across, and he pitched great for the first couple months of the season. So they're going to need something like that. They're going to find something like that. You've got Hill, you've got Fried, you've got Rodon in the rotation. Marcus Stroman, who was shopped during the offseason, was in trade talks, looked like he might not even make the rotation. He's going to be your number 3 starter. So the Yankees are at a point where they're really going to be counting on guys like Will Warren, Carlos Carrasco, and next guys up, whoever they can, to backfill that rotation and take those big innings.
You bring up Carrasco. It's a name that Mets fans are very familiar with. He's shown that he has something left in the tank this spring.
I think he does. He's come in and he's looked great. And it's an opportunity where he came in large part because he had a prior relationship with Matt Blake, the pitching coach. And you looked at it in the first weeks of spring training and said, is he really going to have a shot to make this team? And then as attrition kicked in here, as you lose guys like Gerrit Cole and Luis Gil, you start looking a lot closer and say, all right, Carlos Carrasco could pitch some big innings. Can he give you 4 or 5 innings here, get the ball to the bullpen? And that's one of their strengths of this year coming into the year. They do have an excellent bullpen. And so when they do have leads going late, I think they'll be able to protect them more often than not. But the question is, who's going to make these starts for this rotation?
Last year was pretty obvious. The strength of this team, you could see it on the lineup card every day. Soto, Judge, back-to-back. Nobody wanted to deal with that. What do you think the strength of the team is this year?
I think it comes in their bullpen. I really do, because when you have a guy like Luke Weaver, who looked excellent as a closer, took over that role in September and locked it down throughout October, and then you add Devin Williams, a two-time National League reliever of the year. I think you bring in the airbender, you plug that into the ninth inning, and when you've got Weaver setting up for Williams, I think more often than not, if you get a lead to the late innings, and they should be able to do that quite a few times this year, they'll lock that down. So remember what a concern that was last year when Clay Holmes, Mets opening day starter Clay Holmes, by the way, struggled in that role and had to be removed. Weaver took over and stepped in, and he was such a find for them. And the Yankees are really good at that. They're really good at finding guys who may not be on your radar. Ian Hamilton is a great example. Who had heard of Ian Hamilton? He's come in, and now he's a really important part of that Yankee bullpen too. So that's one of their strengths, is they're able to find pitching power arms in the bullpen. As Alex Cora said yesterday, there's a lot of change-ups in this bullpen too. And so I feel like that is a team that is going to get you out more often than not.
You were around Clay Holmes for years, the highs and the lows of his Yankee tenure. Are you surprised how his, number one, that he's trying to become a starter, and two, that it's just spring training? It's hard to always have a true takeaway from spring, but how comfortable he's looked as a starter?
Well, Clay is very even-tempered anyway, so he never got too high or too low, and that's what I think made him a great fit for the closer's role, too, is you have to have that. If you blow a save, you can't bring that into the next day. You can't let it affect you, and he was always very good at that. I never sensed that it was piling on him, even when the media and the fans certainly were getting on that. And I think he had 15 blow saves last year. It got rough at times, but he was very placid and very even-tempered, and I felt like he was never letting it affect him outwardly. So, I was surprised that he was taking on a starting pitching role. So were the Yankees, by the way. I talked to people in the organization. I said, did this ever come up at any point? And they said, no, it didn't. We never thought of Clay as a starting pitcher, but he's not only trying it, it seems like he's succeeding at it. And so we'll see how the year goes for him, but it's a great opportunity, and clearly he's stepping up for a rotation that is going to need him.
There are so many surprises during a baseball season with how long it is, so it's always tough to outline them as weaknesses going into a year. But are there question marks with this roster that you're going to be closely keeping an eye on?
Oh, there's so many question marks, and they've just continued to grow during this camp MRI that the Yankees have had here. But my biggest question marks are on the offensive side, I think. Certainly starting pitching is a huge question mark at this point. But let's talk about the offense a little bit. You lose Giancarlo Stanton, who was such a huge presence in that lineup. Look, I know what his regular season numbers were, but he was an October force. Just that imposing presence, having him down there, you look in the on-deck circle, and you got big number 27 there. They're not going to have that for the foreseeable future. To a lesser extent, DJ LeMahieu, I think he would have been the opening day third baseman if healthy. He got 2 at-bats in spring training. So that kind of told you how this spring was going to go. There's a lot of questions. Look, is Jason Dominguez ready to step in and be your everyday left fielder? They're counting on it. Defensively, can he cut it out there? We've seen him take some bad routes, some misplays in spring training. It's a hard position to get out there, especially left field at Yankee Stadium. That's the most ground you're going to have to cover. That's the most challenging defensive position, I would argue. And so they're really throwing him into the fire, and they're going to let him sink or swim out there.
You brought up Dominguez and Will Warren. Are there any other young guys in the system that maybe not necessarily out of the gate, but they're going to play a role for this team at some point this season?
I don't know about this season, but I'll tell you who has impressed me the most this spring is George Lombard Jr. This kid, whether he comes up as a shortstop, a third baseman, he's 19 years old, but he's already added on some muscle. You see the power is real. The big league pedigree is real. He's been around a clubhouse before. His dad played in the majors, so he feels like he's been here a long time, even though he's only 19 years old. And, when I talk to him, I kind of feel like he's Alex Rodriguez, teenage Alex Rodriguez. That's the comp I have, just in terms of his confidence, his maturity at this point. So I think this kid's going to be a big league star. We're going to be seeing him in the Bronx years to come. Spencer Jones also has looked good in spring training. He's trying to cut down his strikeout numbers. He struck out 200 times last year, but the power is legit. He looks like a left-handed Aaron Judge. He's just got to hit the ball. And, he said swing changes make him feel dangerous up there. So he needs to be dangerous this year when he goes back to Double-A and impact the baseball, because when he hits it, good things happen.
No matter where the teams are, the Subway Series always has a different amount of electricity. Now, with expectations quite high for both of these teams, the Soto dynamic, I guess the Clay Holmes dynamic, Is this the most highly anticipated Subway Series, you think, in quite some time coming up this year?
In quite some time, yes. Look, I'm biased. I covered that 2000 World Series. I covered Roger Clemens throwing the bat at Mike Piazza after earlier in the year, Clemens had hit Piazza in the helmet. So I don't know if it's ever going to hit that peak again. That was awesome to be there for. There was electricity in the building every time these two teams got together. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And, you know, as Aaron Judge said, with Soto going across to Queens, this is not just a one-year thing. They're going to be going head-to-head for the heart of the city for years to come, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
So Pacoda currently predicts the Yankees to finish second in the AL East, record of 85-77. What are your record, not even record prediction, just overall prediction for the Yankees this year? Especially, I always say the toughest part about record predictions for any team is this game, the season in general of baseball, is such a war of attrition, and it feels like the Yankees, much like the Mets in a way, are being tested by that very early.
Yeah, I think that definitely losing Garrett Cole and Luis Gil out of the rotation hurts those projections. 85, 86 wins sounds about right to me. I still look at this as a playoff team. I think that the expanded playoffs certainly help in that regard. But you don't lose Juan Soto and not feel it. And that's why I think the Yankees were smart to pivot. You're not going to replace a Juan Soto. You can get guys who can play those positions, but they scored, I think, 815 runs last season. They're going to score less than that this year. I don't know if it's going to go back to 2023 where they were under 700, probably somewhere in the midpoint, I would think. If they can get Stanton back at some point, that will be huge. If guys can step up, Jazz Chisholm, for example, Austin Wells, Anthony Volpe, if those guys take a step forward in their development, that's what they're going to need to be able to fill in and kind of backfill. Because, like I said, Soto leaving, there was a reason that was their plan A. But I would say if Soto had re-signed with the Yankees, they weren't going to do a whole much more there. I mean, that was basically going to be their financial commitment there. And so they would be in this position one way or the other here where we'd be asking a lot of questions about this Yankee team, especially if they intend on staying close to that $301 million tax threshold. So there's more than one way to build a team here, and we're going to see if the Yankees figured it out on athleticism, on run prevention, and pitching.
Bryan Hoch covers the Yankees for MLB.com, does such a great job, and we really appreciate the time today. Thank you, Bryan.
You got it. Thanks so much.